Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Obviously, still under the weather. You can totally hear it in my voice, at least I can. But that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Meta and X, formerly Twitter, because they're honestly harming democracies worldwide. And here's what's going on. Now, this is coming from the Associated Press, but I thought it had a really good write-up on this. And I've spoken about this in similar tangents, but now it's kind of coming to a head. Now, if you didn't know, Google, interestingly enough, was the first big tech company to say a while back that they would impose new labels on deceptive AI generated political advertisements. Obviously, that could fake things like candidates' voices or actions. Again, I've written on this, I've talked about this. This is not news. But interestingly enough, now US lawmakers are starting to call on social media platforms, specifically X and Facebook, as well as Meta's other property, Instagram, to explain why they're essentially not doing this as well. Now, two Democratic members of Congress sent a letter this past Thursday to Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, and X's CEO, Linda Yaccarino, expressing quote-unquote serious concerns about the emergence of AI-generated political ads on their platforms and asking each of them to explain any rules that they're crafting to curb basically the harms that this is going to do to free and fair elections, not just the United States, but anywhere where there's potentially a contentious election in a democratic-based society. Again, something I have talked about and sneak preview, they're not doing anything, and I will talk about that and let you know why. And to quote U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota, in an interview with the AP, they are two of the largest platforms, and voters deserve to know what guardrails are being put in place. We are simply asking them, can't you do this? Why aren't you doing this? It's clearly technologically possible. Now, the letter basically to the executives from Senator Klobuchar and also U.S. Representative Yvette Clarke, Democrat of New York, warns, and I quote, with the 2024 elections quickly approaching, a lack of transparency about this type of content in political ads could lead to a dangerous deluge of election-related misinformation and disinformation across your platforms, where voters often turn to learn about candidates and issues, end quote. And that is actually one of the biggest problems. Facebook in particular, also Twitter or X, I should say, to a good extent as well, are where people get their information. Confirmation bias kicks in. You trust your relative, you trust your friend. They're posting something and maybe they've got basically a far right or far left or whatever confirmation bias, and they're posting fake stuff. You trust that person, and here we are. Now, X and Meta, obviously the parent of Facebook and Instagram, did not respond to requests for comment on Thursday, yesterday. Now, the pressure on social media companies comes as both lawmakers are helping to lead a charge to regulate artificial intelligence-based political ads. So, for example, a House bill introduced by Representative Clarke earlier this year would amend a federal election law to require labels when election advertisements contain AI-generated images or videos. For Senator Klobuchar, who is sponsoring, obviously, companion legislation in the other House, the Senate, she's basically aiming to get this passed before the end of the year. That said, we don't have a Speaker of the House right now. Speaker McCarthy, in an unprecedented move, was essentially voted no confidence and voted out, and right now there's infighting, so who knows if we're going to be able to pass bills. We can't even pass a resolution condemning the violence, in Israel and Hamas and all that kind of stuff because, again, no speaker. It's a gridlock. Quote, that's like the bare minimum of what essentially is needed. Now, in the meantime, both lawmakers said they hope that major platforms will take the lead on their own, especially given the disarray that has left the House of Representatives without, as I mentioned, an elected speaker. Interestingly enough, as I said, they're not doing anything, and I will explain that. Now, Google has already said that starting mid-November, it will require a clear disclaimer on any AI-generated election ads that alter people or events on YouTube and other Google platforms or products. Google's policy applies both in the United States and in other countries that essentially have laws verifying election ads. Facebook and Instagram, basically their parent Meta, does not have a rule specific to AI-generated political ads, but has a policy restricting, quote, fake, manipulated, or transformed, end quote, audio and imagery used for misinformation, and not that they're doing anything to curb that anyway. Now, a recent bipartisan Senate bill co-sponsored by Senator Klobuchar and Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, as well as others, could go farther in banning quote-unquote materially deceptive deep fakes relating to federal candidates, with exceptions for parody and satire, meaning if Saturday Night Live wants to take a swing at it, they're allowed, because it's universally understood that Saturday Night Live or The Onion or any one of these is satire. Where you bleed the line is when an unknown person is doing satire and it doesn't feel like satire, and that's obviously a debate to be had. Now, AI generated ads are already part, if you didn't know, of the 2024 election cycle here in the United States. One aired by the Republican National Committee, or RNC, this past April was meant to show basically a future of the United States if President Biden won re-election in 2024. So it employed fake but realistic looking photos showing boarded up storefronts, armored military patrols in the streets, and waves of immigrants creating panic, and on and on and on. It was a pretty, I've seen this ad. It was pretty bleak, to be perfectly honest. Now, Senator Klobuchar said that such an ad would likely be banned under the rules proposed in the Senate bill. And that makes sense if they're basically putting out something that looks real and people do not understand, oh my God, this is happening right now. It's going to be 10 times worse in 5 years. You know, if President Biden gets reelected or whatever that is, not knowing this is not happening right now, there obviously is a huge issue. And so, as I mentioned, the senator said that these would be banned. So something like a fake image of Donald Trump hugging Dr. Fauci, the infectious disease expert that basically spearheaded COVID response under his administration, and that essentially was shown in an attack ad by a primary opponent of Donald Trump. That would be Governor Ron DeSantis. He's running for the Republican nomination as well, and put out this ad essentially of Donald Trump hugging Anthony Fauci, where we know they're typically butting heads in real life. But obviously, if people are not discerning that enough, they'd think, oh my God, like I love Trump, but I hate Fauci, and now maybe I'm worried about this. You know, those are things that we have to consider. As another example, Senator Klobuchar cited a deep fake video from earlier this year purporting to show Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren in a TV interview suggesting restrictions on Republican voting. She never had that interview. Obviously, that was fake as well. But this is what we're talking about. I have an article coming out soon called How We Lose Our Reality. And this is how we lose our reality. Now, the FEC, or Federal Elections Commission, in August took a procedural step towards potentially regulating AI-generated deepfakes in political ads and opening up to public comment a petition that asked to develop rules for misleading images, videos, and clips. That comment period expires on October 16th, for the record. But this is the issue. And as I've reported on both in video, podcast, radio, writing, any format that I can get it out there, is that both Twitter under Elon Musk and Facebook/Instagram, aka Meta under Mark Zuckerberg, this year, basically to quote unquote trim the fat to streamline efficiency, cut the responsible AI teams, cut the safety and security teams down to the bone. There's like 2 people, I think, if any, now that work at X or Twitter that are actually looking at this. We are walking into a 2024 election, which is a complete onslaught of misinformation, disinformation, not just coming from people here that drink that Kool-Aid, but from foreign intelligence agencies and all of that. And while the FEC may slap rules around, let's say, the Democrats and Republicans from running those kinds of ads, nothing is stopping an foreign intelligence agency, from putting something like this out there and getting around the laughable, filter that Facebook has, and virtually no filter, on Twitter/X, especially since they just demolished the capability of their verification system. Anybody with $8 can look like anybody, essentially, in some way, shape, or form until they're caught. And so this is a potential problem we have. And this is not going to get better. It's only getting worse. Facebook was developing a tool that would help researchers and their own internal teams start to spot, find, and track these kinds of trends. They killed it. They fired that team. I've reported on this. You can go Google this. We are walking into just a basic shit show of an election, and it's going to be ramping up disinformation and misinformation. And we all have people in our lives that are believing demonstrably false information and talking about things like the Dunning-Kruger effect. You're talking about people that have virtually no information but feel it in their bones and then dig in. It's very hard to get people to understand or realize the logic of their position, of which there is none. So this is what we're walking into, and I'm sure I'm going to get some of those people that read this and say, Nick, you're an idiot, and here's why, but when you have candidates claiming they can fix things like the Israeli situation in 24 hours, when you're talking about the foreign policies situation that is so complex, it goes back centuries, if not millennia. You've got people that believe that understand that is something that they believe in their hearts is real, when quite frankly it can't be. So here we are. I'm going to leave it at that. I've gone probably too long than I should. My throat is killing me if you can't tell. But that is your news of the day. And all I would ask, because we're not going to be educating the general population, is to just educate and keep on the forefront things like this and explain it to those friends, family, relatives, whoever it is that essentially fall for this kind of stuff. Because quite frankly, we're in this together. And if people that have no concept of reality and believe things that are just unbelievably demonstrably false also have the right to vote, and they do have the right to vote, it really does behoove us to try and balance the scales with just solid, calm, rational information. And so here we are. It's killing democracy, and we're literally watching it live. It's unbelievable to me. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter, where you will see a lot of information, hopefully factual from me, and disinformation and misinformation from a lot of other sources, but hopefully factual from others as well. Same with YouTube, where you can subscribe to me. Please make me your daily dose of sanity. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, just please, attempt to stay private and attempt to stay educated accurately. Thanks, everybody.